Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. We are studying the commentary of Bhagavata Shankaracharya on the Brahma Sutra, the fourth Brahma Sutra. Now, in this section, Bhagavad Shankaracharya, he explains why there is no transmigratory existence of Brahman or Atman, and this state is attained by, that is when ignorance is dispelled. This state is attained by the knower of Brahman, or the knower of the identity of Atman and Brahman. In the previous section, we saw Tasmad Dehadi Vyatirikta Atma Astitva Vadinam Dehadau Aham Pratyayo Mithyaiva Na Gaunaha. As far as the persons who emphasize or tell that there is an Atman which is separate from body and so on, or the body-mind complex, for that group of people, aham pratyaya, the cognition of I, is mithyaiva. It is indeed false. It is not just secondary, but it is false. Na gaunaha, it is not figurative, or it is not just secondary, but it is false. In this section, this argument is carried further. Tasmad, therefore, mithya pratyaya nimittatvat sa sharirattvasya. Sa sharirattvasya. That means the state of being embodied. The state of being embodied. The state of sa shariratva. Of the embodied state, because it is based on false understanding or false knowledge, mithya. Because it is based on false knowledge, the state of embodiment and consequently the cognition of I in body, mind, and the other three koshas of the Pancha Koshas, mithya pratyaya nimittatvat, because of the cause of the embodied state being nimitta means cause, nimittatvat means because of it being so. So because the cause being mithya pratyaya, a false cognition. So the cause of the embodied state, the state where we consider ourselves body-mind complex, that state is born out of mithya, false pratyaya, cognition, false knowledge. Siddham jivatah api vidushaha ashariratvam. Vidushaha jivitaha api jivatah api ashariratvam. Siddham. So it is established. It is established. It is proven. What is proven? That the person who has understood this truth, vidushaha, the wise person, that person, even though although jivataha, in living state or while even living, ashariratvam, that person attains the unembodied state. Ashariratvam, unembodied state. So this is the state of Jivan Mukta. who are free even when they are alive. Alive in the sense, even when they are in the body. Means when you can see them in a body distinct from other bodies. Even then, when a person has attained the knowledge of Atman or attained the knowledge of Atman being identical with Brahman, Jiva Brahma Aikya, Atma Brahma Aikya, Brahma Atma Aikya. When this knowledge is attained by a person, even though that person is living in a body, that means we can see that person is in a body, in an embodied state. Effectively, that person becomes unembodied. What does it mean? In the Tattva Bodha, Bhagavata Shankaracharya himself says that a person who attains this knowledge, thereafter, that person ceases to experience the fruits of one's actions. So, the texts, Vedantic texts, talk about this state where the karma or actions which are yet to bring their effect, they become like a dagda bija. Bija means seed. Dagda means which is cooked or which is fried or roasted, means which has been brought in contact with fire. Dagda, which has been burnt. Literally the meaning is burnt. But there the meaning is that the seed has been cooked. So if any seed is cooked, all the lentils which we eat, essentially they are all seeds. After they are cooked, if they are sown on the field, in the field, nothing is produced. No sapling comes out of them. So Dagda Bija, all the Agami karma and Sanchita karma of a Jivan Mukta, they are destroyed. And what is left is Prarabdha karma. So Prarabdha karma, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought says that the Jivan Mukta has to stay in the embodied state till the Prarabdha karma is exhausted. So Shankaracharya says in Tattva Bodha that this Prarabdha karma, how is it exhausted in the case of a Jivan Mukta? Because the Jivan Mukta ceases to experience any karma. And the only karma which is left is Prarabdha karma. And that Prarabdha karma is experienced by a person who either serves or disturbs or causes suffering to the Jivan Mukta. So the bad karma of a person, of the Jivan Mukta, will be experienced by a person who causes misery to the Jivan Mukta. Good karma of the Jivan Mukta will be experienced by a person who causes happiness or does some good service to the Jivan Mukta. So what does it mean? Vidushaha, of the wise person. Jivataha api ashariratvam siddham. Even while living, Jivataha api, even while living, that person's unembodied state is established. Tathacha, further, Brahma with Vishaya Shrutihi, about the Brahma with, knower of Brahman, Shruti, Vedas or Upanishads, say like this. This is a quotation, citation from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Tad yatha lavayani valmike mruta pratyastha shayita evameva idam shariram shete atha ayam ashariraha amritaha prano brahmaiva teja eva iti. So this is a quotation from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Tad yatha, that is like Ahinir Lyavayani. So ahihi means snake and nirlyavayani means slug or the skin of a snake. So snake has the habit of shedding its skin periodically. It sheds its own skin periodically. So just like the skin of a snake, Valmike, is shed. Usually we see it shed on an ant hill. Valmike. Mrita, that is dead. Pratyastha, which is cast off, which is thrown. Shayita, it lies there. So the dead skin or the skin shed by a snake, which is lying dead on an ant hill, we see that similarly, evam eva, in the same manner, idam, this shariram, shete, this shariram, this body also lies. Once a person gives up the body, then this body lies dead. Why? Because one has given up attachment to the body. So here, from the Badarayana Upanishad, it is said that just like the slough or skin of a snake lies on an ant hill, which is dead, that is, the skin is dead because it has been shed off, it has been cast off, it has been shed by the snake. Similarly, this body also lies. That means after a person gives up the identification with the body, that body lies. So in the case of a Brahmavid, in the case of a knower of Brahman, even though one might see that person, the Jivan Mukta, the Brahma Jnani, the knower of Brahman, using body, but it is as good as a snake giving up its skin. So after the snake sheds off its skin, the skin is not anymore belonging to the snake. Similarly, the knower of Brahman sheds all association with one's body. After that, even if the body of the knower of Brahman is there, there is no association with the body, and so it does not matter if the body is still there. So the body lies like a mrita, like a dead body. Then it said, Atha ayam ashariraha. So this afterwards, this ayam, this ashariraha, this unembodied, amritaha, immortal, pranaha, life, Brahma eva, teja eva, is indeed Brahman, is just light. Teja means light. So this embodied state of what we see, this embodied state is just what is being seen by us. It is a dead thing. Though we see the embodied state of a Jivan Mukta. Here already it has been told, Brahmavid Vishaya, Shrutihi Brahmavid Vishaya. Regarding a person who is a knower of Brahman, this is what the Vedas have to say. So just like on an ant hill, because usually ant hill is where a snake resides. So just like on an ant hill, this we see this skin of a snake shed there, and it is a dead skin, it lies there dead. Similarly, in the case of a knower of Brahman, the body lies there dead, and the unembodied state, that is the state of Atman or Brahman, is Amritaha. There is an immortal Pranaha. So it is called as a immortal life. Immortal life. And it is Brahma eva, Teja eva. It is indeed Brahman. It is indeed Teja eva. It is indeed light. There is another quotation also here. Sa chakshuhu achakshuhu iva. Sa karnaha akarna iva. Sa vag avag iva. Samanaha amana iva. Sa pranaha aprana iva iticha. Further it is told about that state. What state? The state of the knower of Brahman. Sa chakshuhu achakshuhu iva. So even though achakshuhu, even though without eyes, Brahman does not have any organs. So even though Brahman is without eyes, sa chakshuhu iva, it is as though Brahman has eyes. Akarna sakarnaha iva, though without ears, it appears as though, iva means as though without ears, it is as though one is having ears. So avag savag iva means though without speech, though without the organ of speech, it is as though one has the organ of speech. Though without amana, though without mind, it is as though one has samanaha iva, one has mind. Though without vital energy or prana, it is as though one has prana. Smritihi api, even in the Smriti text, that is in the Bhagavadgita, it is told Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha. So Arjuna asks, how do you define the characteristics of a person who has realized one's true nature, who is established in one's true nature? How does that person behave? How do you understand? Kima sita vrajeta kim. How does that person walk or conduct oneself? How does that person sit, etc.? Iti adya, beginning in this manner, sthita prajnasya lakshanani, the characteristics of a person who has known Brahman, sthita prajnasya lakshanani, achakshana, having understood or having described, delineating or describing or enumerating the characteristics of a person who has realized Brahman. Vidushaha sarva pravritti asambandham darshayati. The Bhagavad Gita, through the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, he darshayati, he explains or demonstrates the asambandham, the non-association of vidushaha, of a person who has realized one true nature, with sarva pravrittihi, all kinds of activities. So a person who has realized one's true nature has no connection with one's activities, means there is no asakti, attachment. There is no attachment. So that is why that person does not experience or does not face the results of any action, because that person has transcended the embodied state. Ahankara and mamakara, I and mine, I-ness and mineness, they are transcended, these two states. So kartritva, bhoktritva, the notion of being an agent of an action or a doer of an action, and the notion of being the experiencer of something, both are given up by, both have been transcended by a knower of Brahman. So that is why that person is sarva pravritti asambandha. So that person is free from any association with any kind of activity. That is shown or that is depicted in the portion starting from this Arjuna's question. Sita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava. Sita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava. Sitadi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. So Arjuna requests Sri Krishna to tell the characteristics of a person who has transcended the embodied state, and who has established oneself in one's true nature, sthita prajna. Tasmat, therefore, na avagata brahma atma bhavasya yatha purvam samsaritvam. One of the arguments by the Purva Paksha, by the opponent, was that we do see that even after attaining the knowledge of the identity of Brahman and Atman, as before, a person experiences samsaritva or transmigratory existence or association with worldliness. A person does see worldliness, one does witness worldliness in a person who has attained the knowledge of the identity of Brahman and Atman. That was one argument. So that is now set aside. Here it is said, Tasmat, therefore, because in these texts it has been clearly shown that there is no connection of the person of the knowledge of Brahman or the person who has got the knowledge of the identity of Atman and Brahman. That person has no connection whatsoever with one's body and mind. That person does not have any association with one's body, pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, anandamaya kosha. So body, prana, mind, buddhi, and anandamaya kosha. That person has no connection. So that is why na avagata brahma atma bhavasya, of a person who has avagata, understood or realized, known the identity of Brahman and Atman, of that person, na yatha purvam samsaritvam. That person does not experience worldliness as before. As before, yatha purvam. That means before one attained the knowledge of the identity of Atman and Brahman, that person does not experience that worldliness or that association with the body after attaining the knowledge of the identity of Brahman and Atman. Yasya tu yatha purvam samsaritvam. And one who has samsaritvam yatha purvam, as before, if one experiences samsaritvam, worldliness or worldly state, that is the state of being born again and again repeatedly and experiencing death repeatedly. If one does experience that state, that means like before. Like before here, what is the meaning like before? Like before that person came to know about Brahman and Atman. So there are some people who don't even know that one's true nature is Brahman. That is a wonderful message of the Upanishads or the Vedas, which can be attained only through the study of the Upanishads or the Vedas. One cannot get this knowledge or message from anywhere else. So either you study the Vedas yourself or you study through a guru. Else you cannot attain this message. That is the idea. You cannot understand this knowledge. So if a person has yatha purvam here, means before, as before. So as before what? In the case of a knower of Brahman, it is as it was before knowing the identity of Brahman and Atman. In the case of a person who has not known Brahman, what? As before. As before means before that person started talking about Atman and Brahman. So when you come to know about Atman and Brahman, you start talking about Atman and Brahman. means you have known that. Intellectually, at least you have known it. So, if yasyatu, indeed, if a person has, or but for a person who has yatha purvam samsaritvam, experiences the worldly state or worldliness or the state of transmigratory existence, repeated birth and repeated death, like before that person came to know of the Atman, then na asau avagata brahma atma bhavaha iti anavadyam. Then one has to understand that asau, that person, of that person, na avagata brahma atma bhavaha. That person has not yet realized the identity of Atman and Brahman. One has not realized the identity of Atman and Brahman. That one has to realize. Iti anavadyam. That is anavadyam. It cannot be countered, or it cannot be falsified, or it cannot be rejected. It is anavadya. It is, one cannot set it aside. It is irrefutable. It is irrefutable logic. One cannot deny that logic. That if a person, even after coming to know of Atman and Brahman, does not transcend or does not go beyond the worldly state, that means that person has not realized the identity of Atman and Brahman. So if a person has realized Atman and Brahman identity, then that person, in no case that person can be born again. So Sri Ramakrishna talks about how there should be some kind of congruence or correlation between what one says earlier and what one says afterwards. So they should match. One thing which one says, that thing should tally with the following thing. There should be a correlation of logic. Suppose somebody says a person fell into a pond. The pond was deep and the person did not know swimming. But after 2 hours, that person was found to be living. That is not logical. It does not, the things do not tally, means they don't match. How can a person who does not know swimming survive for 2 hours in a pond which was very deep? So it does not match. So like that, Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a person who is just talking from the knowledge one attains through reading or studies without experiencing, you can understand that person. Why? Because that person would be telling mutually contradictory statements. So he gives an example. There was a preacher, it seems. He says, you see, God is nirasa. God does not have rasa. God does not have rasa. Rasa means does not have this, does not have ananda. God does not have ananda. So God is very dry kind of person. So we have to give this ananda or this bliss to God through our devotion. Through our devotion. So only through our devotion will God get ananda. That is the idea that preacher was preaching. So Sri Ramakrishna says, see such a stupid person. In the Upanishads it is said, Raso Vai Saha. We should remember that Sri Ramakrishna did not formally study these things. He studied them listening to other people. So Raso Vai Saha, other saints or other sages, etc., he used to listen to their talks. Talks means they used to come and stay in one place, and he used to just listen, talk with them, discuss with them when he was a young boy. So he says, Sri Ramakrishna says, Raso Vai Saha. The Upanishads say Raso Vai Saha. And how this preacher is saying that God does not have rasa Upanishad says, the Taittiriya Upanishad says actually, that Brahman is indeed the embodiment of rasa, essence. It is the essence. So definitely God is the source, or Brahman is the source of everything. Then how can this person say? It doesn't make any sense. This person says that God does not have rasa, so we should give rasa. Then there he gives another example also, that a person said that in my house there is, in Bengali, ghoda, as in Hindi and many other languages also, Indian languages, ghoda means horse, and goal ghar means the cow shed. Goal ghar means cow shed. So a person said that in my house, my cow shed is full of horses. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying this fellow does not know what is a cow shed and does not know also what is a horse. Because in cow shed, you don't keep horses. You keep a horse in a stable. So in Hindi, it is called astabal. So in a stable, you will keep a horse. In a cow shed, you will keep cows. So it is mutually contradictory, saying that in my house, there is a cow shed full of horses. So you don't know neither you know about cows, nor do you know about horses. So here also, the opponent is saying that a person who attains the knowledge of Brahman and Atman, the identity of Brahman and Atman, that person continues to be samsari, continues to be in a transmigratory state. That is totally contradictory. It is totally illogical. It is not at all possible. If a person has attained the knowledge of the identity of Brahman and Atman, immediately that person will become a Jivan Mukta, will be freed from this transmigratory existence. Then further, here, this stand of the Siddhanti, or the person, the Advaiti, is here summarized by saying that Brahman is indeed having the Vedas as its source. Shastra Yonitvat, that sutra, it has two meanings. One is Brahman has the means of knowledge of Vedas. That is, Vedas are the means of knowledge of Brahman. And also, this entire universe, it has got its source in Brahman. Shastra Yonitvat. Brahman is the source of the Vedas, and Vedas are the means of knowledge of Brahman. That is the meaning of that sutra. Two meanings are there. Two parallel meanings are there. So here, Brahman means not like some other. So the source of knowledge of some ritual, Vedic ritual, that is also Vedas. That Vedas are also the source of knowledge of many Vedic rituals. But then that Vedic ritual, as supported by its subsidiary rituals or auxiliary rituals. But here, Brahman is not like that. Brahman is an independent entity. It is a pre-existing entity. It does not depend on anything else. So that independent Brahman, to know that Brahman, a source of a valid knowledge of that Brahman are the Vedas. So this is what is now established. Bhagavad Shankaracharya says, Yat punaruktam shravanat parachinayoho manana nididhyasanayoho darshanat vidisheshatvam brahmanaha na swarupa paryavasayitvam iti. Yat punaha uktam. Also, the argument, this is an argument by the Purva Paksha, by the Mimamsaka, which has been already presented by Bhagavad Shankaracharya. And here he again reminds us of that argument. He says, Yat Puna Uktam, that which has been already told. What? Shravanat Parachinayoho. After Shravana, after listening, Shravanat, after listening, Parachinayoho, subsequent to Manana Nididhyasanayoho, of Manana and Nididhyasana. Darshanat Vidisheshatvam Brahmanah. So, in the Upanishad it is told Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya. So, Atman has to be listened to, has to be reflected upon and meditated upon. So, because Brahman is Darshanad Vidisheshatvam Brahmanah, it is seen that Brahman is the Vidisheshatvam, is a subsidiary injunction. Vidhi means injunction, to do or to not do something, injunction. And Seshatva means subsidiary. So Brahman is seen to be the subsidiary of an injunction. Why? Because it comes after. It is found, Darshanat, it is found to be subsequent to Manana and Nididhyasana. After Shravana, then Manana, then Nididhyasana. Only after that, Brahman comes. So that is why it is Vidisheshatva. That is Vidisheshatva means it is subsidiary to an injunction. That injunction, what is the injunction? Injunction is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Only after that, Brahman would come, or the knowledge of Brahman will come. That is the idea. And so, this Brahman, na Swarupa Paryavasayitvam, it does not Swarupa Paryavasayitvam. Paryavasai means the culmination, Paryavasaya. Paryavasaya means culmination, result. So here, Swarupa Paryavasayitvam means the state of the result being the nature of Brahman, or culminating in revealing the nature of Brahman. So here, Shankaracharya says that the objection is that since Brahman is the result of a subsidiary to an injunction, so therefore it does not result in Swarupa, the knowledge of the nature of Brahman. It does not result in the knowledge of the nature of Brahman, or it does not result in the knowledge of the identity of Atman and Brahman. Iti. So this is another Punaha Uktam. This is again, we are repeating the argument which has been given by the Purva Paksha. But since Brahman comes after the injunction, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, so it's subsidiary to an injunction, and therefore it does not lead to the culmination of the knowledge of the nature. Nature means nature of Brahman, or nature of oneself. So that is refuted, that is set aside. Tatna, tanna. Tanna means tatna. That is not so. What is not so? It is not true that the knowledge of Brahman is subsidiary to an injunction. That means Agnihotram Juhuya Swarga Kamaha. So a person will read this injunction and then perform Agnihotram Yajna. So the performance is consequent to this injunction. So similarly, here it is Vidishesha. Vidishesha means it is subsidiary to an injunction. So the performance of the Agnihotra Yajna is, to Agnihotra Yajna has to be performed. That is an injunction. After hearing that, one performs it. And because of performance of Agnihotra Yajna, one attains Swarga. So the attainment of Swarga is definitely subsidiary to the injunction that one should perform Agnihotra Yajna. Similarly, Brahma Jnana or knowledge of Brahman is also like that. That is the argument of Purva Paksha. That only after one performs Shravana Manana Nididhyasana that a person will attain the knowledge of Brahman. So that is told, no, it is not so. Why? Shravanavat avagatyarthatvat manana nididhyasanayoho. So Shravanavat, like Shravana, avagatyarthatvat, avagati arthatvat, in the meaning of realization or knowing. Manana nididhyasanayoho. So manana and nididhyasana, they have to be seen in the meaning of realizing Brahman, knowing Brahman. Avagati arthatvat, because of their meaning being of realization. So it is not that Shravana is something else, Manana is something else, Nididhyasana is something else. No. Nididhyasana, Shravana, Manana, everything, they all mean realization of Brahman. Realization of Brahman. And so they cannot be treated separately for this purpose. They are all to be taken as a unit. They all mean the same thing. Shravanavat. Just like Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana also have to be taken to mean realization of Brahman or realization of the identity of Atman and Brahman. Yadi also, yadi hi avagatam Brahma anyatra viniyujyeta bhavet tada vidisheshatvam. Also, if this yadi, if he indeed avagatam Brahma, this Brahman, after, suppose this Brahman after being known were to be anyatra, somewhere else, viniyujyeta, were to be employed somewhere else, bhavet, then tada, then vidisheshatvam. So then we could have told that it is subsidiary to an injunction. It could have been told like a chemical reaction. So in chemistry, we know that there is a reaction and sometimes a particular product is formed after so many reactions. So one reaction feeds the other reaction. From one reaction, something is produced. That product is used as an ingredient for the next reaction. So in manufacturing processes, we do see one particular thing is produced and from that something else is produced. So like that, one of the wonderful processes in which we can see similar various products, byproducts produced is distillation of oil. So when crude oil is distilled, you see so many byproducts are produced. Those byproducts in further, they produce something else. They are used as a raw material for the production of something else. Similarly, if Brahman, after being known, were to be employed, were to be viniyujyeta, were to be employed for something else, somewhere else, that means in some other process, then we would have understood that it is a subsidiary to an injunction. But that does not happen. Brahman is not employed anywhere because Brahman obviously is, it cannot be employed like that. It is not a material in that sense. It is not an object in that sense. So one has to understand that it is not vidhishesha. It is not subsidiary to an injunction. It is not. Natu tadasti. It is not like that. Tad. Natu tad. Indeed, it is not like that. What is not like that? Brahman is not like that. Like it can be employed in some other place. Manana nididhyasanayoho api shravanavat avagatyarthatvat. And it is not like that. And also manana nididhyasanayoho api. Nididhyasanayoho api. Even manana and nididhyasana, Shravanavat, like Shravana, Avagati Arthatvat. Their purpose or their meaning is realization. Because their meaning is realization, it is not possible that Brahman can, or it is not true that Brahman is used as a subsidiary to an injunction. It is not used because Manana and Nididhyasana, they have their purpose as realization, or their meaning is realization. Tasmat, therefore, na pratipatti vidhi vishayataya shastra pramanakatvam brahmanah sambhavati. Tasmat, therefore, brahmanah shastra pramanakatvam na pratipatti vidhi vishayataya sambhavati. It is not possible that na sambhavati, that Brahman is pratipatti vidhi vishayataya, is the object of pratipatti, contemplation. It is not the object of contemplation. Brahman is not the object of contemplation, pratipatti, vidhi. It is not the object of an injunction on contemplation. Pratipatti vidhi. So, vidhi means we know injunction. Pratipatti means contemplation. Vishaya means object. So, it is not that Brahman, by being an object of the contemplation, injunction on contemplation, Shastra Pramanakatvam Sambhavati. Pramana means means of knowledge. Shastra means Vedas. So it is not that, or it is impossible, or it is not possible that Brahman has Vedas as its means of knowledge, because it is an object of an injunction of contemplation. So here it is told Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya. So it has to be listened to, it has to be reflected upon, it has to be meditated upon. So because of it being an object of this injunction of the Vedas, we cannot say that because of it being the object of the injunction of Vedas, Shastra is the source of knowledge or the means of knowledge of Brahman. No, that is not the case. Swatantram iti ataha, therefore, Swatantram, independently Brahma Shastra Pramanakam. Not because it is the object of an injunction on the contemplation, injunction for contemplating, or an order for contemplating. Not because Brahman is, the Vedas say that you have to contemplate on Brahman. Not because of that does Brahman become, or does the Vedas become the source of knowledge or the means of knowledge of Brahman. No. Swatantrameva Brahma Shastra Pramanakam. Independently itself, Shastra or the Vedas are the source of the knowledge or the means of knowledge of Brahman. Swatantrameva. Not because of its being any object or end result of any injunction, but even otherwise. Otherwise means without it being the object of any injunction, or without it being connected to any injunction, Brahman is Brahma, Swatantrameva Shastra Pramanakam. It is independently, in its own right, it is understood by the Vedas. That means through the Vedas. That means Vedas are the means of knowledge of Brahman. Vedanta Vakya Samanvayat iti Siddham. Why do we come to this conclusion? So this Adhikarana is also called Samanvaya Adhikarana, Tattu Samanvayat. Because there should be a congruence, there should be a harmony between different passages of the Vedas, various passages of the Vedas. So Vedanta Vakya Samanvayat, on account of Upanishad declarations being harmoniously telling this. Upanishad declarations harmoniously convey this. That is why that is the case. Because of their harmoniously conveying this, it is the case. Iti siddham, this is established. So here again, the source of the knowledge of Brahman or means of the knowledge of Brahman is established to be the Vedas, not because Brahman is the object of some injunction on contemplation, or that Brahman is the auxiliary or the subsidiary to some injunction, but because Brahman in its own right or Brahman separately has the means of knowledge as the Vedas. So for knowing Brahman, the means of knowledge are the Vedas. So that is why Brahman Shastra Pramanakam means is known through the Vedas. That is why, not because it is connected to any injunction. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Any questions? Smriti, any question?
No, Swamiji.
Okay. Shubharatri.